Mike drove past traffic like a madman, trying to reach the campsite before sundown. He wasn't usually the type of father who took his family to camp, as work always demanded a lot from him. Whatever vacation they had was something which could easily be planned, or like a vacation package from a travel company. This time, he had this burning desire to go camping at a new campsite that caught his attention recently. Everyone was surprised at the sudden decision, but readied everything and came along. Even Mike was surprised, but one day during work, he was suddenly struck with the desire to go camping. It was when his colleagues mentioned a new exotic place, which wasn't known by many, but had a great atmosphere. Since then, Mike had been hell-bent on going camping. Mike had a lovely wife and 2 kids, who were very eager for the camp. He looked at the navigation and realised that he was actually close, and that he would make it. Just then, he noticed 2 other SUVs, and a pickup truck, all going along the path of the campsite. Mike felt a bit uneasy that there might be a crowd at the campsite. But they finally reached it, and thankfully it was empty, other than for the 3 families he had seen earlier. But he figured the place was big enough to host everyone. Something that didn't sit well with him was how everyone arrived at the same time, however. He walked around and talked to them, and everyone was from different places, and they all heard the place barely gets any people. We brushed it off as some coincidence, and all set up camps in various parts of the vicinity. The tent was set up relatively easily, and Mike quickly set up the generator and tables. It was already night, they just had their dinner and went to bed. Mike had planned to go to the forest early the next morning, as he heard of a great lake residing in the middle, where he wanted to go fishing. The next morning, everyone was prepared and set off into the forest. But that was when they noticed the 3 other sets of campers had also set off at the same time. They decided to go in a different direction, not to interfere with one another. The family travelled for a solid hour, only to realise they were entirely on the wrong path. After a bit of finicking around with the navigation and the map, they still couldn't reach the lake. Just then, they heard a loud scream and quickly ran in that direction. They reached a clearing where the other 3 teams were standing. Apparently, everyone had heard the scream and dashed to see. And Mike also found out the others were lost as well. But soon, everyone started retracing their steps, as they said someone from their group was missing. Mike turned around and noticed that one of his children was missing too. Just like the rest, he too went back. They searched all over for him, but couldn't find him. Mike noticed that something was off about the forest. It was unusually quiet and dark. There weren't even any wild animals they saw. No sounds of insects or anything. There was barely any light, even though the time was midday. The forest had an ominous vibe to it. Just when he thought the forest couldn't get any weirder, he heard a scream from his wife. Mike ran up to her, and who, clinging hard to her kid, they found some carcasses of a dead person on the ground. The body looked fresh, as not even flies were over it. It was mangled and ripped open from the chest. It was like some kind of horrid beast had torn it apart. The dead man's face was barely visible, as it was marred by what looked like claw marks. He took the kid and wife and pushed them away from the dead body and into a clearing. Mike tried to call for help, but nobody responded back. There was no signal. The phone was pretty much unusable. They continued their walk, looking in the direction of the setting sun. They went in the direction which they thought was their camp. But after an hour of walking, Mike froze as a chill ran down his spine. 4 lifeless bodies were hung by the neck on a large tree's branch. The 3 bodies loomed eerily and peacefully. Mike recalled that this was the team in one of the SUVs, and just then, he also recalled the dead person they had seen earlier had a cap, which everyone from the pickup truck wore. Mike took his family and ran towards what they thought was the exit. But just then, he tripped on some tree roots and tumbled down a small hill. He found his footing again and called out to his wife and kid. They were gone. Mike climbed back up and looked all around, but they were nowhere to be found. Not even a clue. Mike broke down crying as he pictured his family being in those situations of the dead people he had seen earlier. Mike abandoned his pursuit to find the exit, began looking for his family. As he was looking, he heard 3 gunshots in the distance, followed by a scream. It was a lady's scream, and Mike feared it was his wife. He ran towards the sound, and when he reached the place, he saw a pile of dead bodies, all maimed and ripped open. He saw the man holding the gun had a spear through his throat, which landed on the ground, so the man was sort of leaning on it. Mike looked all around, and he couldn't see anyone from his family. But he was certain that was all the people that came to the camp. He took the gun and resumed his search. After hours and hours of searching, a whole night passed by, and he couldn't find his family. Mike later gave up and began to go for the exit, which he found after some hours. He saw his camp and began eating and drinking water like a madman. He didn't have any clue what took his family, or those campers. He didn't know if it was an animal or a human being. All he knew was he was the only one who survived.
Subscribe today or beware.